Gettr says they're a safe space for free speech, but is that enough? It's Morningstar News. So I guess we are sort of interested in these alternative Twitter, Facebook, social media applications and spaces. Parler last year, especially around January 6th, the riots, insurrection, then got a lot of focus, and especially with Trump on Twitter getting banned and all those things going on around the same time. So after the whole Parler situation, a lot of applications started popping up, basically trying to provide different alternatives to Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and the real big popular social media platforms. And so Gettr is just another one of these promoting, free speech and, things like that. So the article on Gizmodo is talking about how Gettr promised its users to free them from big tech companies, right? Like the Twitters and Facebooks out there. But Gizmodo, the author here, Tom McKay, is saying that, well, they're still sending the information back to Facebook and Google, so you're being tracked, and that's not freeing people from big tech companies, right? If you're still being tracked and your data is being sent, even if you're not sending specific data, you're sending basically fingerprints, which allows you to get tracked all over the web. As it is, it's really hard to avoid being tracked anyways. Maybe you can avoid Facebook and Google directly, but like we were saying, the fingerprint is, we have your IP address, you've been to this other site, well, now we have you here, the data is all connected somehow, right? So it's really hard to avoid those sorts of things, especially with these apps where, you don't have necessarily access to the code that's doing everything, right? So it's not as easy as modifying the CSS or the JavaScript. There's some stuff that goes into avoiding this type of thing. So Gettr's response was basically, they're using that for marketing purposes, to get more eyes on it, which, that makes sense. But I think the two sides are talking past each other. Gettr didn't address at all the issue of being tracked. And I don't think people really think about that when they're thinking about, oh, now I can say whatever I want. But yeah, say whatever you want, but now you're being tracked and you say something wrong and people are gonna come and get you. And I think that's what some people think these sorts of platforms are protecting you from, but they're not. And in reading the article, we were interested in the Gettr response, talking about how they want to make it a safe space for free speech, and to get rid of political influence and stuff like that. But the people who are moving from the Twitters and the Facebooks and onto these alternate platforms, what types of people are those, right? Is it a one-to-one copy, so you get a general idea of what everybody thinks, or is it the echo chamber, right? And that's a big thing with social media. But so we just thought that was an interesting article. We're really interested in, I guess, these kind of privacy things. I think our stance on a lot of it is different than some people. Like when people say you're the product, your data is the product. Like, okay, yes, I'm aware of that, but they expect us to be offended or something like that, right? So yeah, things like that. We have controversial opinions, I guess you could call it, on that. So we're interested in this type of thing, even if it's not a concern necessarily for us. We know it's a big concern for many, many people. Yeah, so that's all we've got for you today, and curious what you think about these alternatives to Twitter and Facebook. Do you think it's necessary? Do you think, do you think you go to one place for one thing, one place for another thing? Why not both? Things like that. I'm curious what you think about Gettr in particular, and Gettr's response to Gizmodo here. So yeah, that's all we got for you today, and take care.